Men, have you ever watched a dishonest person get the promotion, the liar get the platform, or how about the one who cuts every corner imaginable and walks away richer while you're still over here trying to do this whole integrity thing? If you've ever looked at the wicked getting applauded and thought, God, are you even paying attention? Well, congratulations. You're in good company. Solomon asked this same question over 3,000 years ago. Apparently, God's been fielding this question and this complaint for quite a while. Doki Moi men, welcome. This is The Sword. So Solomon opens with a question that sounds like flattery, but isn't. He says in verse 1 of chapter 8, "Who is like the wise, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the hardness of his face is changed." But keep reading, though. You'll realize this isn't a chapter celebrating wisdom, but rather a chapter that's exposing its limits. There's an old Pearl Jam lyric that I've never forgotten that says, "The young, they can lose hope because they can't see beyond today, the wisdom that the old can't give away." So wisdom isn't something someone can hand you. It has to be lived. And in this chapter, Solomon gets specific, almost uncomfortably current. He says, "Then I saw the wicked buried. They used to go in and out of the holy place and were praised in the city where they had done such things. This also is vanity." That's verse 10. Again, notice, not exposed, but praised in the holy place nonetheless. And a few verses later, he doubles down. He says, "There is a vanity that takes place on earth, that there are righteous people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked, and there are wicked people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous." That's verse 14. And how often have you asked yourself, why does evil get rewarded while good gets punished? Think back. Cities burn, buildings get torched, and the people caught on camera doing it walk away with little more than a slap on the wrist. A good Samaritan steps in to stop a violent attacker and ends up the one facing charges while the assailant walks. Executives and officials profit off of a pandemic that tore families apart, or the trafficking networks that prey on the most vulnerable while the people who could stop it simply look the other way. Nobody answers for that. Isaiah saw this same pattern and he named it plainly. In Isaiah chapter 5, verses 20 and 24, he says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who acquit the guilty for a bribe and deprive the innocent of his right." So apparently, not much has changed in 3,000 years, except the platforms. The wicked, they don't stand at the temple gates anymore. Instead, they get invited to congressional hearings. They get a talk show couch invite. You get six-figure influencer deals, book deals, and in a way, to talk about or write about the fact that they got away with it. Our culture rewards influence over integrity, image over character, applause over holiness. If you watch long enough, and you'll start wondering if righteousness even pays. But rest assured, there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. But Solomon doesn't tell us to lose heart. He tells us to fear God. And that's the pivot that most men miss. Generally, we want an explanation. But God offers a relationship instead. And that's the lie that sits underneath every why God moment. That if I can't understand what God is doing, then he must not be in control. But Scripture says the opposite. God rarely explains himself before he asks you to trust him. Look at Job, right? The man who spent chapter after chapter demanding answers. And when God finally showed up, he didn't hand over an explanation. He handed over his character. And it turns out that was enough. And James sums this up in James 1 verse 5, where he says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God who gives generously to all." Notice what James doesn't say. He doesn't say ask for the answers. He says ask for wisdom. Wisdom doesn't explain your circumstances. Rather, it teaches you to stand in them without losing your grip on God and to obey him even when you don't understand the trial that you're walking through. So more than ever, men, it's on us to stand firm in these evil days, to trust that God is sovereign and his justice will come in his time. We are asked to stand in the full armor of God, wear that daily as we face what's coming for our families. Because as a husband and a father, you are the priest and the prophet standing in the gap, calling out injustice and holding the line on what's right. So men, today's battle orders would be to stop asking God, why is this happening? But start asking, Lord, what are you forging in me through this? Because one question demands an explanation while the other builds a man. And remember, faith isn't built on having all the answers. Rather, it's built on trusting the one who does. If this episode hit home, send it to a brother wrestling with the same question, wondering if God still cares and if he's even still in control. And if you haven't yet, hit like and subscribe. So next week, Ecclesiastes 9 is where Solomon will tell us to eat our bread with joy and drink our wine with a cheerful heart. A little lighter than the last few chapters for sure. You've earned it. So keep alert, keep your sword sharp, stand firm in the faith, be strong, act like men, and be found dokimos, tested, approved, genuine. We'll see you next time. Sharpen our sword in Ecclesiastes 9.